Welcome back to another episode of the King Ray Ray Show. I know it's been a minute since we've been through, but we're back again. No excuses for these time abuses. Now, today's story, man, is about former Cleveland Browns star Kellen Winslow Jr., who was a fairly decent tight end in the league quite some years ago. Of course, the Cleveland Browns haven't been any good since Bernie Kosar was their quarterback, but they have had some amazing players come through the franchise. The franchise just can't put a winner together. But Kellen Winslow Jr. just took a plea deal to accept 12 to 18 years in prison as opposed to a life sentence for his second rape charge. Now, he pleaded guilty Monday to raping an unconscious teen in 2003. An unconscious teen in 2003. And to sexual battery involving a 54-year-old hitchhiker in a deal that spared him the possibility of life in prison. This story is from the Associated Press. Winslow initially hesitated and seemed to agonize over his decision. Quote, I'm sorry, I'm just not thinking very clearly. End quote, Winslow told the judge at one point. He asked the judge for more time before he finally entered the guilty pleas, moments before he was about to be retried on 6 felonies, including kidnapping, sodomy, forced oral copulation, and 2 charges of forcible rape in San Diego County Superior Court that could have sent him to prison for life if he was convicted. In exchange for his plea, the court agreed to sentence him to between 12 and 18 years in prison for the 2 charges and dismissed the others. In June, a jury found him guilty of raping a homeless woman in Encinitas, north of San Diego. Jurors also convicted him of 2 misdemeanors: indecent exposure and a lewd act in public involving 2 other women. But that jury failed to agree on other charges, including the alleged rape of the hitchhiker and the rape of the unconscious 17-year-old girl in 2003 when he was 19. Under the plea deal, the attack on the hitchhiker was reduced to sexual battery. The 36-year-old former tight end at one point was one of the highest paid in the NFL. Had previously pleaded not guilty to the charges. His attorney, Gretchen Van Helms, has said the sex was consensual. 5 women took the witness stand this summer, and 3 of them were expected to testify again. Prosecutor Dan Owens said outside of the courtroom that the women were brave to want to testify again, but that he was glad they would not have to put themselves through it again. Quote, each of these victims, they didn't try to come out here in order to try to frame Mr. Winslow, Owens said. The fact that they had that courage to come forward and speak with law enforcement and to testify to all the things that he had done while facing all these cameras, I think it was important to me to make sure that the truth was heard. And it was important to me to make sure that he was held accountable for each one of those crimes. Defense attorney Mark Carlos said Winslow made a difficult choice to accept the plea deal. Quote, the downside of any conviction would land him in prison for the rest of his life. And he made his decision based upon his family, his father, his children, and he wanted to be there for them in the future. End quote. Defense attorneys attacked the credibility of the 5 women and pointed out inconsistencies in their stories in the first trial. The court had planned to allow the new jury to hear that Winslow was convicted of raping the homeless woman, who would have been among those testifying again. Jurors would also have been told about the indecent exposure conviction, though that woman was not expected to take the stand. Winslow, who played for Cleveland, Tampa Bay, New England, and the New York Jets, earned more than $40 million over 10 seasons in the NFL. He is the son of Chargers Hall of Fame receiver Kellen Winslow, who was in the courtroom throughout the first trial and on Monday. Winslow Jr. repeatedly looked back at his father before entering his plea. As he left the courtroom Monday, he reached an arm out to his father, who responded by touching his fist to his heart. Winslow's attorney said he suffers from traumatic brain injury from his football playing and a motorcycle accident that ended his career. They will argue that information should be taken into consideration at his sentencing. This boy has a history of these type of activities. And I know it's easy to say that we live in this accusation culture, but I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. We also live in a rape culture. Former NFL player Darren Sharper got jammed up. And I'll talk about his story next time. We live in a culture where any type of unwarranted attack on a woman is going to get you in hot water. And it may be easy for men to say that some of these women are lying or something, but all of these women aren't lying. I think what happened to Cosby was terrible. I don't think he, disrespected or disgraced that many women, but I do think some of those women were telling the truth. If only one was telling the truth, he deserves some time for that. If only one of these young girls that R. Kelly is accused of breaking the law with, see, you can't worry about what happens in another culture. Maybe in Africa, it's okay to be with a young girl. In America, it's not, Jack. And if even one of those young girls was a part of his harem at any time, he and their parents deserve to be prosecuted. My problem with R. Kelly's case is that the parents aren't being prosecuted. This brother's a disgrace, man. He has a Hall of Fame father who is well respected in the league. This guy was well respected as a player in the league. He was a hell of a tight end with the Cleveland Browns, man. Now I don't recall him playing for Tampa Bay, New England, and the Jets, but he was a hell of a player for the Cleveland Browns. You got to keep in mind, man, that there are a lot of things going on out here. And we all know men who get a little money and prestige, and the power that happens with that overwhelms them. And they turn into monsters. We know men who didn't have great luck with women, and they get a little bit of money and power, and they turn into those types of men. I know men, and I know some of you do as well. We have to keep in mind that women deserve to be treated like human beings. Regardless of what you want to say, you can talk about how they dress, you can talk about how they behave, you can talk about all of that. But women deserve to be treated like human beings. Unless a woman is your woman, you don't have the right to do anything to her. You don't have the right to touch her. You don't have the right to do any of these things. But some men just don't get it. So to be able to take a plea deal of 12 to 18, he still got to be in prison in California, which is tough. But, prison anywhere is tough. But to be able to plea down from possible life, he was going to get life. To be able to plea down from life to 12 to 18 years says a lot. He's only 36. You understand? If he does 18 years, he'll be 54 when he gets out. Still fairly young. If he does 12 years, he'll be 48 when he get out. Not even 50. Not even at the half century mark. So he'll be eligible for parole in 12, which will probably come quicker with the time served that he'll get. Whether they do a day for a day or, a day for 3 days, however they do it, he's going to be eligible for parole in less than 12 years. But let this be the last time that we, as black men, stand up for every man who was accused of doing anything wrong to a woman, because I know men personally who didn't respect women at all as human beings. And some of those men could have possibly done some of these things. So I won't say that every time a man is caught up in a situation like this, it's because the women are attacking him. This man has a history of this. It's one thing to be a monster, but to rape an unconscious teen sounds like some of that Bill Cosby stuff. These things happen. And it's a damn shame that they do. And what's even worse is that men get in their feelings and stop thinking logically and really want to convince themselves that all of these men are innocent and nothing happened to them. See, I can't buy into that. I won't buy into that. And I say this moving forward. Every single time that one of these stories comes up, you can't turn around and say, oh, we're in an accusation culture. All these men are being accused. Let me tell you something. Maybe the truth of the matter is that some of these men are finally being brought to justice for the things that they've done over all of these years. And I'm sure there are some who are wrongly accused. But until we figure out how to make the differentiation between those two sects of men, we can't simply just throw out every single charge, every single man who's brought to charges or brought to face charges and say that he didn't do it. Because with this guy's history, I can't really say I'm convinced that this isn't good for him. Y'all comment down below and let me know what you think about this topic, man. Another man throws his life away for being a hound. But this is the type of mindset that the perpetrators of the dating game, as it is currently constructed, create. Peace.